Welcome everyone to the Global Business Leadership Forum today on April 8th, and we're welcoming our CEOs, business leaders, and coaches worldwide. On our topic today is sustainable remote talent management. And our guests today are Kevin Lawrence, Coach Emeritus, as well as author from Vancouver, Canada. Also from Canada, Calgary, next door, Abhay Sisia. And then last, Juletta Broomfield, senior coach from San Jose, Costa Rica. So welcome panelists. And let me go ahead and jump right in with our first question. What is happening today, literally today, April 8th, in companies you advise around the issue of talent working remotely? What are the trends, challenges, and insights?
It's actually going really well. Like, we did a survey of the CEOs we had a CEO call, I think, yesterday morning. And we had one Sunday night, and asking them about remote work in particular. And I was saying, is productivity up? Notably up, the same, or down? And 80% of the CEOs said it's up or notably up. Actually, they're more productive with remote working. And we followed up to ask them, so after this, what are you going to do? And I think 25% said the same, 15% said less. But the rest were saying they're actually going to build more remote working into what they're doing. And it's messy. Like, it's not, it's messy, but it's actually working. And our clients, I mean, everyone's got goals. They got tight cultures. They are focused. And, because we push very hard on stacking the deck with A players, notably above average teams in terms of strength. So most, not all, but most of them, it's actually going incredibly well. Now they're putting a lot of energy into the culture on the side to kind of reinforce the culture piece and reinforce some of the social needs that people have. But yeah, I would say that it's going quite well. The challenges are more just the business issues, and then how do we sustain this, because this is not a sprint, this is potentially a long marathon. Now we're getting into the mode of how do we keep it going, because most companies have quite a good rhythm. I'd say 80% of them are really good, and lots of examples of what they're doing. But it's turned out to be a very good time for most of them, except for some financial challenges.
Essentially, what's working for us in Central America is the technology platforms are working really well. Extremely well, and they weren't necessarily before, so we're lucky with that. I also mentioned, Keith, that we have less accidents on the roads. There's no crazy drivers on the roads. What's not working so much is we went cold turkey. Apart from the multinationals, very few people do work home and have the remote working policies. So they have no setup. They're now, if you will, they are imposing on their family because they have their children at home. So the balance between that is quite incredible. And there's not always an understanding of what it takes to work home. So I think that's a good summary. Is that good enough? Did I miss anything important?
No, I think that's excellent. So let me ask a question. What are you hearing about productivity relative to remote workers right now? Maybe a quick comment on that. Kevin, what are you hearing about productivity on the front line?
In that survey we just did, we're hearing that it's up, right? That generally, and again, the key is now to sustain that, but I think it's around 75-ish% said that the productivity currently is up. So for most of those companies, they're, now some of them had to lay off a number of people as well, right? Some people have had to lay off between 20, 50, 80. One of them had to lay off 98% of their people. They're in the tourism business, unfortunately. But yeah, so it's better at this point with some glitches.
Okay. Abhay, what are you hearing about productivity on the front lines?
Well, I think the issue is really about connections. I think the work may be getting done. I think the connections are being lost. I think one of the elements that I talked to one of the CEOs, he's like, I don't even feel like I want to go to work because I don't see the people. I don't be with the people. I'm not, he's a very extroverted kind of individual, so he may be a rare case, but he likes people around him. And I think people are starting to wean off of just working from home. It's a novelty at first. I think people kind of get used to it, and it's kind of fun. You can be on your pajamas and have a meeting. And that novelty at certain point kind of wears off. And now what I'm finding is people need that connection. I'm spending more time with people connecting so they can be more productive. And I think that's an interesting thing that I've seen. I have an IT company, so they are used to having remote work, and they have technology savviness that is way beyond my capabilities. And so that is a great company, and they do well from a productivity point of view. But there are companies that I work with, like a law firm, they're really struggling with it. They're really struggling with, how do we keep in touch with each other, and how do I communicate with my, colleagues that I need to share the files with properly. So there's some challenges. I wouldn't say that the productivity as high as it could be. Certainly, I think it's taking a hit on the morale.
Okay, Juletta, what are you hearing about productivity?
So we just actually completed, like Kevin, 3 questionnaires into multinationals, government, and mid-size enterprise. And it's really quite different across the board. So the multinational companies, they're actually seeing an increased productivity, and they're going, oh my goodness, why didn't we introduce this more? Our employees have been asking for it. Why didn't we do it? The government, there are pockets of the government that are really suffering because they simply weren't in an automated position. So remote, it's basically allergic to remote, yes? So some pockets are struggling. And the mid-size, many of them were not set up, unless they were tech-based, they're not set up to do this, and their workers are just fumbling. So there's huge opportunity around here, Keith, but you can see the divergence. We also did, as part of the survey, we actually did behavioral studies, and we're seeing there's a difference in your behavior depending on where you're coming from, in how you respond to this remote situation. So fascinating. I mean, incredible.
So Gillette, on that last point, where you come from, geographically, culturally?
Oh, sorry, and your behavioral. Yes, your natural behavior. If you're a collaborator, yeah, oh boy, this is difficult for you. And Abe was referring to that before. But if you're independent, individualist, I'm talking predictive index terms now, you're okay. You're fine, thank you very much. So absolutely depends also. So you've got a whole bunch of factors going on here, yes?
Okay, thank you for that. The DISC profile comes to mind in the 4 different categories, and I can see where that would be valuable. An I on the DISC is going to probably need more connection, where an S and a C will probably want quietly alone and go deeper. Okay,
that's it.
Okay, second question then. This is more your opinion on the ground. Okay, the data coming at each of you as a coach working with clients. So this is more objective. What is your opinion on the longevity of the impact of COVID-19 on companies and their employees? Let's assume we're through the second quarter. We get on the other side of the second quarter. There is some more certainty. What's the heart of the impact? Evan, let me give you this one first.
We might still be locked up in the second quarter. Brad Giles, another great, I had a great conversation with him last night, and they just released some data in Australia from the Australian government. We know our governments aren't necessarily telling us the truth. But the data from Australia showed that the peak, and they're kind of slowing and really flattening the curve. The peak of number of cases in Australia was December.
Okay.
Christmas time. Which is not the information that we've been getting to this point. We've been getting information to this point, a couple months, from the stuff I'd seen, hey, a little more back to normal in the, June, early July, potentially, where it's opened up and we can start to, move towards the office. If that was the case, I would think it would still be at least a year before everyone was fully back in the office like they used to be, maybe a year and a half would be my guess. I'm not talking economically, I'm talking, physically working. But then this data from Australia is showing something notably different. And it was shocking, actually. I was stunned for a while as we were talking about this. So these are all just wild ass best guesses. But for sure for sure, even how we interact as humans, it's a couple of years. No two ways about it. Economically, it's a couple of years from all the data that I've seen. The question is, when can we go from being essentially working from home to being back working together in the offices? And, if we go back to the old Stockdale principle, look at the brutal fact and almost the worst case scenario and then hope for better. Worst case scenario is we could be working like this for 12, 18 months is the worst. I would say the worst case. Interesting, even my guys in India, I was on the phone with last night, they got locked down for 3 weeks with 4 hours notice, kind of like part of South America. But they're also expecting they're going to get told, because they're on day 18 or 19, they're going to get told it's another 2 or 3 weeks. So we don't know, like nobody knows, but I'm planning psychologically with my clients, this could be way longer than we think. And then we're going to work like hell on the optimistic best case scenario.
Okay, good. Abhay, I want to go to you next, but first a perspective. One reason I asked this question, it is a subjective question. There's no history on this that is valid to pull from. So the purpose behind this question is to make sure leaders listening in see different perspectives so they can create scenarios in their head and then think through those scenarios. The data models are coming out, they're being refined, but there's not a lot of longevity and history behind the models. So the models will continue to evolve through time. They're predictive, but we can't rely on them. So we have to create scenarios. Abhay, over to you. What's your thought?
Well, it's interesting. I think the doom and gloom, I see it every day on the news, like it's, these numbers and this many deaths and this recovered. It's a bit of it's a shock to the system. And I believe that we're going to be talking about this, just like the 9/11 Pearl Harbor. There's been very huge incidences in the world that has caused this kind of a pandemic. And so for me, I think this is going to be talked about 20, 30 years from now, and people are going to be writing thousands of books on it and how we went through it, how leadership was present or wasn't present. Where I'm seeing, which is very heartfelt, is the normality of what human nature can do through adversity. So people are standing up and doing the most incredible things. So for example, if you have elderly neighbors, people are helping them out with their groceries, or, people are writing these beautiful, I go for a walk, I'm bored out of my mind at home. So I go for a walk and I see these beautiful signs that the kids have written up on trees and on fences. And these encouraging signs. And I saw one that was really cool. There was, traffic signs, like a green, yellow, and red, meaning green is fine, I'm fine, I'm okay, everything is great. Yellow means I needed an errand done. Red is I'm in distress. So people are putting these little signs up in their windows so that people can go and help them. And I think that speaks to what we have lost in the past, where we were very commercialized. We were very driven by how much money you make, how much, big house you can buy and the cars. All of that now seem to have come into place of what it should have been. There was a bubble that was created. I think people are now going back to the humanity's sake of things. From a business standpoint of view, I know people who have been let go, who are supported by the people who are still at the company in a very unique way. They're still having conference calls with them, Zoom meetings, trying to keep them spirits up. There's a lot that the leadership can step into, and communication is a big one. So some companies have actually still provided benefits to people who've been let go, continue to pay for them, for example, because they understand that some of them have some unique challenges. And I think that this will speak to the heart of humanity out of all of this and come back to our normal senses. I think that we kind of lost our ways in a lot of different ways.
Okay, excellent.
It's impressive. I've seen so many examples of it. It is awe-inspiring how you see humans rising up in all kinds of, it's pretty cool, actually, I have to say. Yeah.
Kevin, do you have an example you want to put out there?
Oh, so many things. I mean, I just, people reaching out to each other. It's like, I've got friends from the past that are reaching out to me and I'm reaching out to them. My parents in the place that they're living, neighbors are finding ways to take care of each other without going close to each other. I've just seen a lot of amazing things. Just an executive I was just talking to this morning. They were talking about, a bunch of them living in the city with, children in small apartments. And they're finding ways to create remote games with their kids and have remote parties and doing things to like what we're saying is, if you ever watch the show Little House on the Prairie, Laura Ingalls and the Ingalls family living in a small town, it's almost like it's gravitating back to some of those values of seriously being there for each other.
Yeah.
So there's more specifics. They're not coming to mind. Even the way, here in Canada, how people, like when you're walking, everyone will walk out in the middle of the road. Like people are so gracious and thanking each other. And the pots and pans. Do you guys got the pots and pans?
Yes.
7 p.m. my neighborhood goes nuts. Horns are honking, air horns going off, and people, like it's and the signs Abahay was talking about. It's really inspiring.
I think that one of the interesting things that I could share with you that was really cool that I just found out, that when you have meetings like this and everybody's, they're all, you can see them in the screen, they're starting to have these meetings with like funky cups. So everybody has to have a funky cup when you're having coffee, or, everyone has to have a hat that they wear, or a scarf that they put on, or do something really unique, or have a sign that says something inspirational that, kind of motivates everybody else. So you write a little sign and everybody gets to read it. So it makes the meeting more enjoyable and more connected. So it's kind of, it's really making people think. And I love it. I love the aspect of, for example, Andrea Bocelli, he's going to have a great concert and everyone should look at this, and it's on Sunday, and he's going to perform on YouTube live and have a concert. And, you can see these stars are trying to do some really unique things, just sitting at home and having these wonderful concerts. I believe that that's where humanity needs to go back to. Connect to each other, inspiring each other, being with each other, even though we're distance apart. And I think this speaks to a lot about what we've lost in the past. And I think it also speaks to how we need to continue this once this thing settles down. And I think we will learn a lot of messages around what we will not put up with. We need that connection, even if you're an introvert. I think we all need it. And I think there's unique ways that people are finding. I'm just also in awe of how people come up with it.
I agree. I mean, the thing is, and you guys may have seen this in the chat, Michael Sink is made a comment about, and we are those amongst those experiencing abundance. What about those that are not? Like, correct. I am insanely grateful. Like our businesses can get messed up, right? Losing revenue, clients can't pay, all that stuff. But there's some people that are going to have a problem, taking care of, like, getting food for their families and things like that. And that's the part that I, and Michael, thank you for suggesting that, because we're like, I live a very abundant life. My family is well taken care of. It doesn't matter how long this damn thing lasts. We're fine. It'll be painful in some spots, but we'll be okay. Like, we're not going to be worried about feeding ourselves. And my God, for the people that are, like, I start freaking out inside when I think about, that's that part. That part is, I mean, we're grateful to be in the positions that we're in, but holy, and that as I, Keith, we chatted the other day, that's what also gets me concerned. There's the financial survival for people. And then there's the mental health part of it that comes as a result of, never mind the finances, family of 5 in a 700 square foot apartment is okay when the kids go to school every day and the parents go to work. And so there's all these other social challenges that we are going to be a part of in our communities and our companies. And I just share something under Keith. I might be going tangent, I'm sorry. But one of my companies downstate's Medix, they got about 450 employees. Their HR team has been calling every single employee in the company. How are you doing? Is there anything we can do to help you? And the CEO gets a list of the people that have the really big problems, and then he's calling those people and seeing what he can do to help them, like really having people's backs. Sorry, Keith,
If I may, I think I would like to add to that. I think the next thing I've been talking to my clients about, past and present, is the emotional roller coaster ride that people are on or will be on. I think the next tsunami, if I may, is going to be the mental challenges, the emotional distress that people are under. And so what I've been doing as a coach is going back to my previous clients and or current ones and offering them free services for coaching for those people who really need it. And I can see that that is starting to come in. More and more and more people are asking for some support. And I believe that as a coach, and again, to Kevin's point, we are in abundance, and I am very grateful. I'm surrounded by most amazing, beautiful people in my life. And so I have support, whereas some people may not. And I think we owe it, being grateful that we owe it to the humanity and to the people to support wherever we can. So yeah, I'll go and get the extra groceries for my next door neighbor. I'll go and, make some coaching calls. I'll do whatever I can so that we can support. And I do believe that where the support is, where we're supporting our clients, the coaches also need support. I think that where, the caretakers need to be taken care of at a certain point too.
Yep.
And so I think the coaching community needs to come together. I think they need to talk to one another and really surround yourself with people who are going through very similar things. And so I'm a huge advocate for people who provide support, need support.
Juletta, what's happening in Latin America? Two questions for you. One, what are you seeing how people are coming together and serving one another? And then secondarily, separately, how long is the impact? What's the long tail on COVID-19 from your perspective?
Great questions, Keith. As you know well, the Latin American culture is so warm. We're all coming. There isn't anything that anyone won't do for another person. Delivering groceries, so everything that Abe has said and Kevin has said, that's happening and more. So it's tremendous. And you can imagine all we do is hug each other. Can you imagine a culture having to stop hugging?
Yeah.
But it's so natural. So I'm giving virtual hugs now because that's what we do to strangers, to everyone. And we always say hello to each other. I mean, apologies to North America, but I can be walking a street and a police car will come up and ask me why I'm walking. And then I go past people and they don't say hello to me. That doesn't happen in Latin America. It's buenos dias, etc., etc. So everyone is coming together to help each other, which is wonderful. That's how it should be. And I'm pretty sure it's going to continue. On the longevity, depending on your pronunciation, I come at it from a few angles, Keith. First of all, the countries and the governments aren't all dealing with COVID-19 in the same way. And if you push that out to the global perspective, that could be good or could be bad. I'll give you a very good example. Tourism in Costa Rica has just disappeared. Aruba, it's disappeared. We rely on the North America. If North America does not bring in the necessary decisions, political, etc. decisions, then guess what happens to our economies? Mm-hmm. So that's number one. The other thing that I love doing is looking at the bigger picture, McKinsey, Moody's, Fitch report, Bain, etc., and seeing where they're going. And that I love looking at the world by sector. Yes. And so if you look at some of the countries and sectors, they're all different. Some of them are already back to what you've called as the new normal, the new healthy normal. So for example, Chinese factories are back to operating, many of them at 80% of capacity. Some are pushing 100%, especially if they've got automation in them. Yes, they don't need so many people. And a good example is Foxconn, the Taiwanese contract manufacturer. They make the majority of Apple's iPhones in China. And they're saying that they've been able to get back to production and they'll be able to meet Apple's requirements for 5G phones by the end of this year. So they're rocketing. And you and I know there's many other sectors that are just exponential at the moment. So I think we have to look at the world very, very differently. The other thing I like to do is go back to Bill Gates and what he said, because I think this is where it leads to what Kevin was talking about, the 2 years. Bill Gates said he estimates that we'll have a vaccine by the fall of 2021. And depending on the readiness of companies at that point, and so heads up guys, CEOs, get ready for when we're coming out. Yes, because you've got to push your accelerator down at that time. And I'm reckoning it could be anything from ground zero to 2 years, like Kevin said, depending on when the rolling of workforces take place. But that vaccine is going to be critical, because we go back to the global, some countries can't do anything without knowing that their customer base is available.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's my read on it. Is that helpful?
Very helpful.
Yep.
Excellent insights. Kevin or Abbe, anything to comment on any of the trends in the data that Juletta referenced there?
I think it's great looking at it because we have lots of clients that are booming.
Yes.
Our food businesses are booming. Some of our technical businesses are booming. We got a client that has a chain of liquor stores. They're up 50%, 50.
Mm-hmm.
So we have, and we've gone through it when you go through and survey of the CEOs we work with, a notable part, we asked them, what's your profitability going to be in Q2? More than half are expecting it to be the same or up compared to budget. I mean, some are wiped out. It'll be a bloodshed. So by industry, and that's why in all of our sessions we're doing with CEOs, we start with the silver linings and the good news. And you guys were hearing so many good stories within this. And that also puts the positivity back into mind. So, but by sector, absolutely, because different, we have one client, unfortunately, that was those tour buses called hop on, hop off in different cities.
Mm-hmm.
So one of our clients not only owns those in a few cities in North America, they're in the middle of rolling them up into a mother company.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're down to zero. It's like the cruise ship business. So by sector, I mean, tourism in particular, that is unfortunate. Live events, we have a few clients that do big scale live events. I mean, that's gone for a few years. So by sector, absolutely. Yeah, I think like I was saying, that point is the best way to looking at it. Yeah, sorry, Abahai, yourself?
Well, and I think right now it's survival. A lot of people, I do have a company that's doing well, but I think what I'm seeing is about 70% of them are just trying to survive, pay their bills, and trying to make sure that they can get to the next quarter. It's really kind of sad because, if it's a residual effect. I was watching 60 Minutes and there was this guy who just last week was talking about how he had to let go 2,000 people in his restaurants. He's ultimately huge.
Yes.
But the
knock-on effect.
Yeah, the ripple effect on people who are, where he gets the flowers from, where he gets the baked goods from, or, the fisherman that doesn't need to fish as much. All of those ripple effects now causing some of my companies that ripple effect. And so it's very difficult to get out of that. And so right now it's really, do we let go of 50%, 70%, 80% of the people? And it's they're in that chaos, trying to figure that out and trying to make sure that, we're doing the right process and communicate to people so that we are ready to go once this thing disappears, hopefully within a year.
Yeah, and if it's only 3 months until June, July, lots of people can work through it. But if it's 12 to 18 to 24 months, that's where the ripple effect will take out so many people in so many business, and never minding the social ramifications, the economic, purely commercial ramifications. We got a client that owns a lot of car dealerships, and short term they're fine. If this is 18 months, then the ramifications are massive, and that's a whole other skill set and access to cash to be able to manage through a 12 to 18 month thing.
Let's pivot the discussion a little bit and talk about culture. So the human condition is one where, Juletta, to your point, in a culture, if you're used to regular touch, that's one way that you connect emotionally. Another one is eye contact when you're together. Another one is laughter in a team, or even conversation in a team. What are your ideas? What are you maybe seeing, but what are your ideas? How do you build culture remotely? Let's say this goes another year. What are some ideas to build culture remotely with teams? Giulietta, why don't you start us?
So if I think about culture, I have a challenge with this because I have worked most of my life remotely. So I've been in Europe, Asia, North America, and my roles have always been remote. And so I think I've just come naturally. Authenticity is extremely important coming from leadership, and being able to get the team to be authentic. And so, for example, I always, when I have a team meeting, is just check in. I know we do good news as a practice, but I say, if you haven't got any good news, tell us the bad news as well. Whatever it is. So be yourself. Allow that to transmit through the virtual environment. The other thing that's really important is to equip your team with all those technological things so that they're not fumbling about. They really feel comfortable with the technology and the new features that are coming in. And that they are happy to use not just the Zooms and the team meetings, but they use WhatsApp. I don't know if everyone's familiar with WhatsApp, but Latin America, it's just, prevalent here. And of course, Asia has its own. So you really, really do combine all of that. And you keep reminding one of our customers, actually two of our customers, every time we have a meeting, their purpose and values come up in the chat. First thing, that's it, reminded. And we remind each other that we're going to make any decisions on the basis of that core purpose and core values. And we challenge each other. And this is where the behaviors come in, Keith. What are your natural behaviors as a CEO or as a leader? Are you risk tolerant? Yes. How do you play out in a stressful, pressured way? Knowing that. So do you know what's happening? More and more people are doing assessments and sharing them. They're bringing them up and comparing them and having a look. Hey, this is why you're reacting the way you're reacting. I'm not suggesting assessments tell you everything, but that's the kind of thing I'm seeing is, and one big word, become more vulnerable. And accept that your schnauzer is going to bark in the background.
Hey, you're just being authentic. So authenticity, your pet is with you. And I'll even put a plug on that. Pets may be more important now than ever before. Okay.
Unconditional love.
That's right. So Giulietta, thank you for sharing your schnauzer today. Okay. Kevin, building culture, ideas, looking out.
I've got amazing clients that have done a lot of spectacular things, and it's been blowing me away. One of the simple thing that people are doing, so when we are doing check-ins, we take the principles from your oxygen mask first of work, self, and life. How are you doing in terms of work? How are you doing yourself? And how's it going at home? Right? Yeah. So getting people to open up around those things, because work can be great, but life can be in the ditch, or yourself can be, depleted. So getting people, that's similar to the vulnerability. One of the CEOs up here that we work with, he uses in, what do you have here? In one of these functions in Zoom, I forget where it is, but it would be in a meeting format, not a webinar format. You can give a thumbs up, thumbs down.
Right.
Yes.
Or a check or an X. So he's saying, okay, anyone that's had a rough patch this week, hit the X button. And then you see all these X's show up. So everyone is essentially admitting that we're in the same boat, and or who kind of got frustrated with their family while they were trying to work this week. So he's actually flushing that out and sharing his own stories to keep that real. I mentioned about medics and them calling all of the people. Another company, a health tech company that I work with, I may have mentioned this earlier, but they've got times where it's social beer Friday. So literally everyone gets on Zoom and everyone gets a beverage of their choice, and they sit and tell stories and do whatever. They have games night, where they will have online video games, just fun games, not anything intense, where people can get together and do that. Another company is in Los Angeles. They are really entrenched in their community, and they're picking a different restaurant in the community as a company to make sure that everyone patronizes to support the local businesses, which happen to be their clients by nature. And then keeping fun involved in it. CEO addresses, I'm sure your clients are all doing it. You know, one company, they're writing a note to the whole, you know, a couple thousand people every day, CEO address once a week, where they reinforce culture and the vision and telling people, here's what we're doing, here are the challenges, and here's, you know, here's what you can do about it. There's there's a number of other ones. Oh, and the other one, so we're pivoting, as all of you are, all of our quarterly planning sessions to be virtual. Thankfully, we've done a bunch of them in the past, but we're looking at things like, okay, how do we get someone to put together little care packages and courier it to everyone? So it's okay, open up the morning box and there will be a coffee cup or a themed t-shirt, but there's nothing wrong with putting boxes together and couriering it to people. And they're taking some of the meeting budget and applying it to that, and including, as long as you're not crossing borders, shipping a little, whether it's a can of beer or some beverage. So literally sending them something that they can crack. And it's just like, it's like a loot bag at a kid's party, but it's a way when we get into that, we all open up our box as we're doing our meeting. In the quarterly planning meetings that we're doing, like we're going to have stretch breaks with music. We're going to have some quizzes, no different than we'd have if we're face to face, but they become more important. Also, when we're working on this right now, at lunchtime, we're going to break up into Zoom rooms so people can have a few minutes to go make their lunch, but then come and sit and have a chat time at lunch. So lots, I know it's a lot of ideas, but there's, the root of it is that they're finding ways to keep the connection and operate like they did, even though it's in a different format. Yeah.
So Kevin, a couple of comments, then hey, over to you. So breaking bread, eating together over Zoom. I've done that with a couple of groups I'm involved. You get to share what you're eating, a recipe or whatever. But also, to your point of sending things to team members, right now landlords want to get paid their rent, but their utilities and their cost basis is actually going down. So best practice, if you're paying rent to a landlord, ask your landlord for a little bit of a decrease in your monthly rent, reinvest that into getting packages and care packages out to your team. So an idea there. And then also a page out of the marketing calendar concept. Most companies have marketing calendars and they look out over a period of 12 months and they say, this is my content. Cultural calendars, I think, are going to be very important.
Great
A
idea.
lot of great ideas going around, but have some team members begin to capture those, build a calendar of culture, very intentional, just like the marketing calendar. Best practice that I'm hearing out on the street.
Yeah,
okay?
And one tiny one I forgot to mention, even with my own team, and there's, I think, 7 of us, we have a call once a week for half an hour just to chat. So we have one, I think it's today or tomorrow, it's half an hour. Hey, what's going on? You know, what's going on? What's interesting? What's kind of been fun? What's been weird? And just literally just a set schedule to chat.
Yeah,
no other
absolutely.
agenda. Yeah, cool.
Hey, building culture remotely.
Interesting. I think part of it is, you know, I think Kevin mentioned that some HR people have been calling the clients or the coworkers at home. What we have is we've initiated for people who are single, and particularly they don't have pets or they don't have partners, and you know, they're alone. And so I think there's some issues around that. But we're trying to get connected to people who may be lonely or perhaps in a place where we're just being very strategic around, hey, listen, how are you doing? What's going on? Checking with them, just talking about stuff, and just so that they know somebody's out there thinking about them. That's huge. I think the other, there have been great examples already given out, but I do believe that one of the things that we're trying to do is to promote local businesses that are struggling right now, And so that, all of us are using local people and local businesses to perhaps go and order food, or perhaps, use their services, etc. I think that's huge. But what I really love is this human spirit around people who are thanking the first responders and the nurses and the doctors. And at 7 o'clock every night, it is undoubtedly one of the most incredible things that you will see is pots and pans and music coming along. Videotapes of that everywhere. And then you can promote that as a company. You can promote, hey, you want to thank people? Go and do this kind of thing. I've promoted, writing incredible messages on inspirational things like Facebook or even on WhatsApp to get the company inspired. So we use Yammer, for example, or emails, just to inspire people that not to ever give up and to, human spirit will live through this more than the virus itself. I do believe that, a couple of items that could be really simple for people to implement is have a buddy, like just talk to them and just say, hey, listen, how's it going today? What's going on? And I do believe one of the other elements is that we've had to make some tough decisions around who do we let go, for example, and we always go back to our values and what we stand for. Then we do the top grading exercises to see if that's the right caliber that needs to go. And so we use common sensibilities at times to see who's a good fit or not. But I'm always inspired by people. They are incredible. There are people who take advantage, and they're a very small percentage of that. But then there's people who will do whatever it takes to make people get through this. And I'm in awe of that. And I promote those people within the culture to say, this is what a good individual could look like. So if they do something incredible, I'm going to showcase them into the company. And so it's pretty important that we showcase good examples, and so that we know what's important, and the leadership absolutely appreciates that. It's amazing.
So looking at the clock, we're going to go to our last question before I click over. Philosophically, the human community is critical to survive and thrive. And just because a company has to let someone go does not mean they have to disassociate the relationship. And I'll just share this. In our case, as a coaching, worldwide global coaching firm, we have some coaches that are really struggling right now. And so they've stepped out to active, but we are still connected with them. We will leave no coach alone out there. And I want to encourage CEOs out there who are having to make those tough decisions. The people are still the people that can still remain connected. Now, how you do that, I think, is the magic and the difficulty. But community is community, whether we can engage someone economically or not. So I just wanted to share that philosophically as a fellow CEO to those listening in. Okay, last question here, and we may bump over a few minutes. What do you feel will be the key considerations, the trends, and forces impacting remote talent the long term? What are some other strategic considerations for long-term remote talent management? Kevin, you want to take this one?
For sure. I mean, the first thing, and I think as Juliette referred to, is that there are certain people who are more suited to it. Like, not only is this a time for more of a wartime leader or leadership, there are some leaders who are not well suited for this type of situation, as you've seen probably some of them melting down. But there's also people who will no longer be A players in their role because of the environment that we're in. So that is a real, so there will be a shuffling of the deck in a number of cases, I think, because of how I've already seen it in companies. And the second thing, and it gets back to the basics, that's why I'm sure for a number of us, why our clients are likely doing better than average, given the circumstance, is laser clear goals and KPIs. You guys, it's the basics. But when people have clear KPIs and clear goals, it will become more normal, because then it's easier for people to self-manage. And for people who don't have that, it becomes a lot more difficult. One, for the people to know where to focus. And then two, for the manager to know they're being effective. the other side of it that I see is that there's going to be a lot more weird conflict stuff because we're not face to face, and we're not almost putting the deposits into the emotional bank accounts of people. So I suspect that people are going to have to learn some more advanced conflict and communication skills. And I think there's going to be some, not just because of the stress levels being higher, just in that different working environment. And I had a question from a CEO of needing to have a really good, tough conversation. And they said, and then they laughed, do I need to wait until I can get face to face? Well, you're not getting face to face anytime soon. So how do you deal with and clean up conflicts in more of a virtual environment? And it's like, when do we get off messaging and get on the phone? When do we go to the phone and get on Zoom? So those kinds of social things and being able to manage some of the weirdness, I guess that will probably become larger.
Okay. Juletta?
So the kinds of trends I'm seeing is that the CEOs and their leadership teams have got to step up to reimagining their business models. For me, COVID-19 has really put a stress on several companies and industry sectors' business models. And they've got to think about their strategy, they've got to think about pivoting. And then, having really got their arms and minds around that, they've got to think about how they align their people and inspire the workforce to actually align with that new model, that new strategy. And that's going to be some pretty rough waters there, Keith. Added on top of that, you're going to see that some companies realize they're just not equipped from a mindset perspective, from a technological perspective, from a behavioral, culture, whatever, to do remote working. This has been the shock of their lives. And so they've got to kind of say, whoa, here's a new world that we've got to get used to, because it is not going away. And so having those tools, the social, the trust. The other thing is, some of them haven't even got to grips with how you deal with global remote, the different cultures that you're dealing with there, because it's not the same culture in one company. And so how do you deal with that? The other thing, having come out of watching the TV last night, I see they're going to have to reconsider compensation. If you're using more toilet paper at home and you're using more internet bandwidth and you're using more of insurance, whatever, your compensation has got to look different. So that's a very tactical, perhaps strategic. I also ask myself, what is the future role of an HR person? So there's a whole bunch of things that are coming up. I don't know whether that made any sense, but that's what I'm seeing.
Okay, no, excellent. Again, we're spurring thoughts that may not be taking root yet in leaders' minds. Abhay, you have last word today. Cultural impact, long-term forces. I know this is a big part of your heart, culture.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think this is going to push a lot of CEOs who are not naturally focused on this element. So this is where I do come in and try to help out. There's some elements I think that the coworkers are needing. They need to have that personal support, that the one-on-one meetings, the more communication, the frequency has to change. It cannot be the rhythm that it was before. So the teams that I have, I touch with them every day, maybe multiple times during the day to say, hey, how's it going? What are you working on? What can I help you with? That frequency has to get higher for our coworkers. I think it starts at the top where the communication needs to flow down very quickly and more timely, so that people know that we're living our values, we're central to our business core and to our people. So they need to communicate more often. What's happening? What is the company doing? Where we're heading? We've had to make some tough decisions. People should know that this is happening. Otherwise, they'll find out 2 days from now and they'll be like, why didn't you tell me? So they have to be more transparent. I think the other piece that I'm trying to get people to be is that vulnerability that some of my colleagues spoke about, that CEOs, once they start speaking about that and going, listen, I'm trying to do the best I can. If you have any suggestions, let me know. And that vulnerability picks up a lot around how do we treat each other and how do we focus on the humanity side of this horrific thing that's happening to our people. I believe the worst is yet to come. Not to be a doom and gloom guy, but it's really being mindful that there's going to be struggles that people are not ready for. And so we as leaders need to anticipate some of these things and to say, hey, listen, what can we get ready to have meetings like this to get acquainted with simple solutions that we can implement that feels right and good. And to me, what I'm noticing with our coworkers, that some of them have been let go and they're still connected to the companies because we did some good work. And if the times come better, we want to hire those people again. And so if we do a good job now, we shouldn't have any problems getting back to normal business. But it's really indicative of how we treat each other, how we communicate, transparency, vulnerability, all of those elements that are critical to leadership. We need to absolutely live them now.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Abhay. Let me end with a story, then I'll thank our guest panelists. So one of our clients locally here in the Portland, Oregon area is a home builder, and he's a real go-getter, and he was frustrated that he could not get in the fight to help with the war on COVID-19 as a home builder. And so he was thinking, talking to his wife, and he came back the next day and set his team down, said, hey, I have an idea. So what they've done is they've drawn kind of circles around the hospitals in the area, and where they have homes that are complete but vacant, they've gone to the hospitals and said, hey, if you have doctors, nurses, healthcare workers that don't want to go and potentially put their families at risk, let's give them a room in the home or the apartment.
Awesome.
And then also anybody coming off of retirement from outlying areas, we'll put them up here for free. And so it's the concept of innovating with what you have to serve those who are on the front lines. And that will go for a season, but also we can turn that in other areas of needs into the future. So encourage and challenge your CEOs to look at their resources and how do they get directly into the fight by serving others. So Kevin, Juletta, Abhay, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Keith, for making this happen.
Okay, take care, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Appreciate it.
Take care. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye.
Be well.